Hey family, it's Dr. Dez here with another episode of the Bowtie Chronicles. Thanks SOS family for doing what you always do. And we're so excited to be here. We're in the midst of a series, and this series is dealing with changing the narrative by looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so the first step was actually examining your culture and climate. If you're really looking at making a difference in your organization, in your business, the first thing that we want to encourage you to do is examine your culture and climate. That's step one. Step two is prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then step three is developing a plan. So what we're doing in this series is, first, we've already looked at the culture and the climate. Now let's take a look at how you see diversity, equity, and inclusion within your organization and your structure. So it's important that you look at the issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so many businesses, organizations, schools, institutions across the country right now are finally looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion in the manner that we should have been looking at it for years past. But now we're there. So we make no excuses for such as we have. For such as we have, God has provided. Now we have this opportunity presented to us that we might take a look at ourselves, our organizations, our institutions, and look at diversity, equity, and inclusion to determine where are we in this process of welcoming diversity, equity, and inclusion. When you think about diversity and inclusion are about giving value to every single person, no matter of their differences. And quite often we will look at individuals and try to pigeonhole, put them in a respective slot because it's comfortable for us. Many organizations have done it, where you put an individual in a position and they work well within that respective position and it benefits the organization, but you've pigeonholed them and you say, this is the best place for them. But there's more to individuals than just that. Diversity and inclusion provides the opportunity for individuals to be their best selves, and these individuals are different and they're adding value to the organization. Diversity. Everybody is an individual and everybody is different. Equality deals with the access to and the opportunities that are presented within the organization. Inclusion is a sense of belonging, feeling respected, valued for who you are and what you bring to the table. Maya Angelou said this: we should know that diversity makes for a rich tapestry and must understand that all the threads of the tapestry are equal in value, no matter what their color. One of the major mistakes that organizations make as they define diversity is limiting diversity to the color of one's skin, their national origin, perhaps their sexual orientation. And that's a limited perspective of diversity. Diversity is that and more. Diversity is when you put yourself in a position that you can refer to the diverse traits of all of the individuals that work with you and welcome those different thoughts. It's only when we value the opinions and the thoughts of others that we can broaden our perspective, thereby providing a better opportunity for everyone involved. So you want to look at your diversity, you want to look at your equity, you want to look at your inclusion. Diversity, again, refers to the traits and characteristics that make people unique. Equity seeks to ensure fair treatment of every person and equality within the opportunities that are presented for the internal and the external stakeholders. It's important that you do so. And then when we look at the issue of inclusion, that in and of itself refers to the behaviors and social norms that ensure people that they would feel welcome. So again, diversity, everybody is an individual and everybody is different. We have to respect the differences that other people bring to the table, because it's in experiencing the differences that we can broaden our perspective, broaden our brand, broaden our reach, broaden our depth. And through looking at the other positions of other people, it doesn't mean that you agree with everything that takes place, but you are at least in a position where you can think through another person's perspective. When you're thinking about equity, it seeks to ensure fair treatment of everyone, the internal, the external, everyone that you come in contact with. I often use this statement of all. Equity seeks to ensure fair treatment for all. All is to the inclusion of everyone and the exclusion of no one. So no matter what the person brings to the table, everyone should be welcomed at the table. So I may bring a perspective that you have never thought of, and it comes from a place that is deep within me, rooted in my experiences, and I want to bring my experiences to bear and making the organization better. So when you talk about now inclusion, it refers to the behaviors and the social norms that ensure people feel welcome. I should feel included. So when I bring a perspective that is somewhat different than yours, or perhaps the same as yours, the bodily gestures that we engage in. So Tommy comes to every time we have a meeting. Tommy comes and he has these off the wall thoughts. When Tommy shares his position and people go, oh, here you go. Does Tommy feel included? The very thought, the perspective that Tommy wants to bring to the table. And Tommy is in a position to learn from even expressing his position. But when he comes to the table and he brings forward his thought, if everyone turns him off or excludes him, gives him the feeling that he can't bring value to this setting because that which he says does not meet our norm. Now you're talking about that culture and climate that we talked about in session 1. The culture is such that it should be welcoming and inviting for all people. The climate is how they feel when they have that interaction, right? So now Tommy has been invited to the table. The culture is one that we want to be inclusive and welcome all of these opportunities, but the climate is still such that when Tommy makes his statement, people automatically turn him off. Look at your culture and your climate. Examine your diversity, your equity, and inclusion. You want to look at these various perspectives. You have to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion if you want to be that brand that lasts beyond the moment. And the final thing is developing a plan. So as we talk about this 3-step process, you want to examine your culture, your climate. Then you want to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then you want to develop an action plan that allows you to address those issues that we've discussed. And it's really important that you examine that data. And we'll get into that in our 3rd session that deals with developing your action plan. But today is really about examine your diversity, your equity, and your inclusion. What are you doing to diversify the experience for all persons? What are you doing to just take a look at equity? Are all people truly treated equitable? Is there equality for all individuals and that they might have a perspective that is desired within the organization? And are they truly included? Do they feel included? And it's important as if you're an organization, if you're a business, if you're an entity that deals with individuals, you have employees, you have a service that you want to provide to individuals, all of the individuals that you want to provide the service for, they should feel that they are welcome. The culture should be one that embraces them. The climate should be one that welcomes them, to let them know that they are adding value to this brand merely because of their presence. When you think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, as a lot of organizations are referencing it at this point, it's commonly referred to as DEI. But you have to look, it's a phrase, right? DEI is a phrase that broadly outlines the efforts of an institution that take and create a more welcoming environment for everyone. That is, again, the internal and the external community. The internal being those people that work there. The internal, that those are the people that are there all the time. The external is perhaps the board that you represent, or the board that has leadership authority over the entity or the organization. The external stakeholders are the people within the community that benefit from your very presence there. The people that said, yeah, we would love to have this business or this organization within our community because it expands the breadth and depth of our community. Those are the external stakeholders, and you want to make sure that diversity, equity, and equality is a part of the fabric of who you are and what is expected from your internal and your external communities. So you want diversity to be a part of who you are. Again, it's often perceived from one perspective, and the perspective that many people address, and it's not that it's comfortable to address it. But this is the place that we look at it. Most often we look at diversity relative to the color of one's skin. It is inclusive of the color of one's skin, but it also includes diversity of thought, allowing you to think a little bit beyond who you are as an individual, to look at those opinions of others and value the opinions of others to the extent that they feel welcome and comfortable in sharing those respective positions. So, that's what it's all about. So as we look at this 3-step process for changing your narrative, again, number 1 is simply examine your culture and your climate. Number 2, prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion as an organization. Where do you want to be when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion? And then develop an action plan so that you may create the narrative that you desperately want. No organization comes into fruition because they don't want to last. They don't want to provide a service for the community that they're a part of. But many organizations fall short when it comes to examining their culture and their climate, looking at diversity as a true priority, and then developing a plan to address the things that came from their examination. Honestly, many organizations now are developing surveys wherein they are soliciting the opinions of the internal and external communities so that they can create a dynamic, they can create a narrative that best reflects their mission and vision. So in the next episode, we'll be talking about how you do that. First, you begin typically with a survey to find out how people feel about your organization, your institution, and then you develop an action plan to specifically address those things that come from that data. It's important. If we want to change our narrative, let's be honest with ourselves. Let's engage in a crucial conversation, and don't be afraid to engage in the crucial conversation and expect that individuals are going to give you their feedback. They're going to share with you their position. They're going to share with you their good experiences and their bad experiences. Don't be angry because someone shared an episode or an experience that you weren't anticipating. It's all about changing your narrative. And if you're sincere about changing your narrative, we've got a 3-step process that we want you to consider. Examine your culture and climate. Look at diversity, equity, inclusion as an organization and institution and prioritize it accordingly, and then develop an action plan that will move you closer to fulfilling the mission and vision of your organization on a daily basis. It's Dr. Dez with the Motivating Factor and the Bowtie Chronicles. Until we meet again, make it a great day on purpose.